I was standing in my garage on a Tuesday afternoon in Phoenix, Arizona, watching my neighbor Karen Whitmore walk down my driveway carrying my pneumatic nail gun like she owned the damn thing. My name is Yates Jackson, and I had just gotten home from my shift at the construction company where I worked as a project manager. The Arizona sun was brutal that September day, hitting a solid 108 degrees, and I could see heat waves rising off the asphalt as this woman brazenly strolled away with my tools. "Hey," I shouted, stepping out into the driveway. "Karen, what the hell are you doing with my nail gun?" She stopped, turned around with that practiced look of indignation that only a true HOA president could master, and placed one hand on her hip. Karen was 52 years old, with that particular haircut that screamed, "I want to speak to the manager," from a mile away. Blonde highlights, angular bob, the works. She wore her typical outfit, pristine white caprice despite the heat, and a lavender polo shirt with our neighborhood's HOA logo embroidered on it. Yates, according to HOA Regulation 17.3, any tools left visible in an open garage constitute a violation of our community standards. "I am confiscating this until you can prove you have proper storage," she said, her voice dripping with false authority. I felt my blood pressure spike. This woman had been the bane of my existence since she became HOA president 3 years ago. Our neighborhood, Desert Vista Estates, was a planned community of about 200 homes on the northwest side of Phoenix. It was a nice area, mostly young families and professionals, but Karen treated it like her personal fiefdom. "That's not a real rule and you know it," I said, walking closer. "Give me back my nail gun right now, Karen. That tool cost me $400. "I will return it once you submit the proper paperwork and pay the $50 retrieval fee," she responded, actually smiling now. She was enjoying this. Retrieval fee? You can't just make up fees. It's in the updated bylaws. Perhaps if you attended the HOA meetings, you would know that. She turned and continued walking toward her house, which was 3 doors down from mine on Saguaro Ridge Lane. I stood there, absolutely dumbfounded. This wasn't the first time Karen had pulled something like this, but it was the first time she had actually taken something from my property. Usually, her harassment consisted of violation notices for things like my trash cans being visible from the street for more than 12 hours after pickup, or my grass being a 1/4 inch too long, or my mailbox being the wrong shade of black. I pulled out my phone and called my wife, Olivia Martinez. We had been married for 7 years, and she was an attorney at a mid-sized firm downtown. If anyone would know how to handle this legally, it was her. "Hey babe, what's up?" she answered on the second ring. "Karen just stole my pneumatic nail gun right out of our garage," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She what?" "She literally walked into our property, took my nail gun and claimed it was some HOA violation. Said I need to pay a $50 retrieval fee to get it back." I heard Olivia sigh on the other end. "That's theft, Yates, plain and simple. Did you tell her to return it?" "Of course I did. She walked away with it anyway. Call the police. Right now, file a report. This is beyond HOA overreach. This is a crime." I had been thinking the same thing, but hearing Olivia confirm it made me feel better about actually doing it. "Okay, I'll call you back after I talk to the cops." I dialed 911 and explained the situation to the dispatcher. She seemed somewhat amused by the whole thing but confirmed that an officer would be sent out to take a report. I sat on my front porch steps, waiting, and watched Karen's house. I could see her through her front window, talking on her phone and gesturing animatedly. About 20 minutes later, a Phoenix PD patrol car pulled up. A young officer, maybe late 20s, stepped out. His nameplate read Officer Chen. He approached with his notepad already out. "Mr. Jackson, I understand you want to report a theft." I explained the whole situation, from Karen's pattern of harassment to her walking off with my nail gun just an hour ago. Officer Chen listened, taking notes, and I could see his expression shift from mild interest to actual concern. "So this is HOA related?" he asked. "She claims it is, but there's no actual rule about tools in garages, and even if there was, she can't just take people's property." "You're absolutely right about that. Let me go talk to Miss Whitmore." I watched as Officer Chen walked down to Karen's house and rang the doorbell. She answered, and I could see her initial confidence falter slightly when she saw the uniform. They talked for several minutes, with Karen pointing in my direction several times and clearly trying to explain her side. Officer Chen remained calm, nodding occasionally, but his body language suggested he wasn't buying it. Finally, he asked her something directly, and she disappeared into her house. She returned a moment later with my nail gun and handed it over. Officer Chen walked back to me and returned my property. "She's claiming this was a civil matter related to HOA enforcement," he said. "But I made it clear that taking someone's property without consent is theft, regardless of any HOA rules. I'm filing this report, and I'd suggest you document everything from now on. If she tries this again, call us immediately." "Will she face any charges?" I asked. "For a first offense, probably not, but this report will be on file. If there's a pattern of behavior, that changes things." I thanked Officer Chen, and he left. I carried my nail gun back into my garage, but this time I made sure to close the garage door completely. My hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline. The audacity of this woman was absolutely staggering. Olivia came home an hour later, still in her work clothes, a navy blue suit that made her look every bit the professional she was. She found me in the garage, organizing my tools and installing a padlock on my tool cabinet. "Tell me everything," she said. I recounted the police visit and Karen's forced return of my property. Olivia listened with her lawyer face on, the one where she was clearly processing information and formulating strategy. "Here's what we're going to do," she said when I finished. "First, we're going to request copies of all HOA bylaws and any amendments from the past 3 years. Second, we're going to start documenting every interaction with Karen. Photos, videos, written logs, everything. Third, I'm going to look into whether other neighbors have had similar issues." "You think this is bigger than just us?" I asked. "A woman who's brazen enough to steal from your garage in broad daylight. She's done this before. I guarantee it." Olivia was right, as usual. Over the next few days, she casually chatted with neighbors during evening walks. What she discovered was disturbing. Karen had been systematically harassing at least a dozen homeowners in our community. Mrs. Patricia Henderson, who lived on the next street over, had paid over $800 in bogus fines over the past year. The Ramirez family had been threatened with a lien on their property over holiday decorations that supposedly violated community standards. Young couples like the Thompsons had been cited multiple times for having a work truck parked in their driveway overnight, even though there was no actual rule against it. But what really caught our attention was when we talked to Robert Chen, an electrical contractor who lived 2 blocks away. He pulled us into his garage and showed us an empty shelf. "See that?" Robert said, pointing. I had $1,500 worth of power tools there. Drills, impact drivers, a circular saw, all high-end Milwaukee stuff. Karen claimed they were being stored improperly and confiscated them 2 months ago. She said I could get them back after paying a $100 retrieval fee and proving I had proper storage. I paid the fee. You know what she told me? That the tools had already been disposed of as abandoned property. Disposed of. My brand new tools. "Did you file a police report?" Olivia asked. Robert shook his head. "My wife talked me out of it, said it would just cause problems in the neighborhood. But I'm starting to think that was a mistake." "It was," Olivia said firmly, "and we're going to fix this. Will you go to the police now and file a report?" Robert looked at his wife, Sandra, who nodded. Yeah, I will." Over the next week, things escalated quickly. Robert filed his police report. 2 other neighbors came forward with similar stories. Mr. Gary Peterson had lost a pressure washer. The Johnsons had lost a leaf blower and hedge trimmer. All taken by Karen under the guise of HOA enforcement, all with demands for retrieval fees. All with the items mysteriously disposed of before they could be reclaimed. Detective Lisa Morrison from the Phoenix PD Property Crimes Unit contacted me on a Friday afternoon. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who had apparently seen every kind of theft case imaginable. "Mr. Jackson, I've been looking into these complaints about your HOA president," she said. "We have enough to establish a pattern. I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course," I said. "After the incident with your nail gun, has Miss Whitmore taken anything else from your property?" "No, but that's only because I've been locking everything up." "Smart. Now the other victims, they all mention retrieval fees. Did Miss Whitmore ever tell you where that money goes?" I thought back to that day. "She just said it was in the updated bylaws. I assumed it was supposed to go into the HOA general fund." "That's what everyone assumed. Turns out there is no line item in the HOA budget for retrieval fees. There is no official policy about confiscating property. Miss Whitmore appears to have invented the entire thing." A chill ran down my spine. "So where did the money go?" "That's what we're trying to determine. We've subpoenaed the HOA financial records, but based on what we've found so far, I believe Miss Whitmore has been stealing from homeowners, selling their property and pocketing the cash. The fees were just extra profit." "Jesus, how many people are we talking about?" "Best we can tell, at least 15 homeowners over the past 2 years. The total value of stolen property is probably around $12,000, maybe more, and that's not counting the fraudulent fees. Detective Morrison told me they were building a case but needed more evidence. She asked me to keep this conversation confidential for now, which I did, telling only Olivia. My wife's reaction was exactly what I expected. "I want to nail this woman to the wall," Olivia said, her eyes blazing. "She's been stealing from families, from people just trying to live their lives." Morrison says they need to be thorough, build an airtight case. Then we'll help them do exactly that. The following Tuesday, there was a scheduled HOA meeting at the community center. These meetings were usually sparsely attended, maybe 10 or 15 people out of 200 homes. This time, thanks to some organizing by Olivia and several fed-up neighbors, nearly 70 people showed up. Karen walked in at 7 p.m. sharp, carrying her binder of HOA documents and wearing her authority like armor. She stopped short when she saw the packed room, and I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross her face. But she recovered quickly, that fake smile plastering itself back on. "Well, wonderful to see such a great turnout tonight," she said, moving to the front of the room. "Let's call this meeting to order. Actually, Karen, we need to discuss some serious concerns about your conduct as HOA president," said Margaret Wu, one of the board members and a retired accountant. Margaret had been getting suspicious about the finances for months, but hadn't had enough support to challenge Karen until now. "This isn't on the agenda," Karen said, her smile tightening. "I'm adding it to the agenda," Margaret said firmly. I've been reviewing our financial records, and there are some significant discrepancies. I'm sure any confusion is just a matter of accounting procedures, Karen said smoothly. We can discuss this in a closed board session. No, said Robert Chen, standing up. We're discussing it now, in front of everyone. One by one, the victims stood up and told their stories. The room grew quieter and quieter as the full scope of Karen's actions became clear. She tried to maintain control, insisting that everything was within her authority, that people were misunderstanding the rules, that she had only been trying to maintain property values. "Where are my tools, Karen?" Robert demanded. "You took $1,500 worth of equipment from me." "Where is it?" "That property was disposed of according to proper procedures after the required waiting period," Karen said, but her voice had lost its confidence. "What procedures? Show me in the bylaws where it says you can confiscate and dispose of residents' property." Karen fumbled with her binder. "It's in the amendments passed last year." "No, it isn't," Margaret said, standing up with her own copy of the bylaws. "I have every version of our governing documents right here. There is no such provision. You made it up." The meeting devolved into chaos. Karen tried to maintain order, but she had lost the room. Finally, a vote was called for her immediate removal as HOA president and suspension from the board pending a full investigation. The vote was 63 in favor, 2 against, with Karen herself being the loudest of those 2 votes. As Karen gathered her things to leave, Detective Morrison walked in, along with Officer Chen and another detective I didn't recognize. The room fell silent. "Karen Whitmore," Detective Morrison said. "Yes." Karen's face had gone pale. "I have a warrant for your arrest for theft and fraud." Detective Morrison began reading Karen her rights as the handcuffs went on. The room erupted. Some people were cheering. Others were just watching in shock. I felt a grim satisfaction watching Karen being led out in handcuffs, her face a mask of humiliation and rage. She tried to argue, tried to insist this was a misunderstanding, but the detectives weren't interested in her excuses. After Karen was taken away, Detective Morrison addressed the room. "We'll need statements from everyone who believes they were a victim of Miss Whitmore's actions. We have evidence of at least 12 separate incidents of theft, and the total amount is substantial enough that she's facing multiple felony charges." The meeting ended shortly after, with people clustering in groups, talking in excited, angry tones. Olivia and I walked home in the cooling desert evening, the temperature finally dropping below 90 degrees. "I can't believe she actually got arrested," I said. "I can," Olivia replied. "She got cocky. She thought being HOA president put her above the law. It didn't." Over the next few weeks, more details emerged. Karen had indeed been selling the stolen tools and equipment, mostly through online marketplaces and pawn shops. The police traced several sales back to her through IP addresses and security camera footage. The retrieval fees had gone straight into a personal bank account she had hidden from her husband, Douglas Whitmore. Douglas was a quiet guy, a software engineer who worked from home and mostly kept to himself. I had talked to him maybe twice in 3 years. He seemed completely blindsided by Karen's arrest. According to neighborhood gossip, and later confirmed by court documents, Douglas had no idea what Karen had been doing. The forensic accountants who went through Karen's finances discovered she had accumulated almost $8,000 in her hidden account, all from the stolen tools and bogus fees. But here's where it got even worse. Karen had also been skimming from the HOA's general fund. Small amounts, $50 here, $100 there, but over 2 years it added up to nearly $6,000. The prosecutor's office charged Karen with 12 counts of theft, multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. The evidence was overwhelming. Her public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor wasn't in a generous mood. Too many victims, too much premeditation, too much arrogance. Meanwhile, Douglas filed for divorce. I saw him one evening at the neighborhood mailboxes, and he looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 2 months. His eyes were tired, his shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry about everything," I said, not really knowing what else to say. "I didn't know," Douglas said quietly. "I swear to God, I had no idea she was doing any of this. I thought she was just really into the HOA stuff. I thought it made her happy." "Nobody's blaming you, Douglas. Karen is. She's telling everyone I should be supporting her, that I'm abandoning her when she needs me most. But Yates, I can't. I can't be married to someone who did what she did, who stole from our neighbors, who lied to me." "You're doing the right thing," I told him. The divorce proceedings moved faster than the criminal case. Douglas had a good lawyer, and with Karen's assets frozen due to the criminal charges, she couldn't mount much of a defense. Douglas filed on grounds of fraud and breach of trust, citing Karen's hidden bank account and criminal behavior. Arizona is a community property state, which usually means assets get split 50-50 in a divorce. But when one spouse has been hiding assets and committing crimes, judges have discretion to deviate from that standard. The divorce was finalized in January, about 4 months after Karen's arrest. Douglas got the house, his retirement accounts, and most of their savings. Karen got nothing except her personal belongings and her mounting legal bills. The judge's ruling was scathing, noting that Karen's criminal behavior had not only violated the law but had also destroyed the marital trust. The criminal trial happened in March. I had to testify, as did Robert Chen, Gary Peterson, and 8 other victims. We each told our stories. The prosecution presented evidence of the sales Karen had made, the hidden bank account, the embezzled HOA funds, everything. Karen's defense was weak, basically arguing that she had been trying to maintain community standards and things had gotten out of hand. The jury didn't buy it. They deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. The judge scheduled sentencing for 6 weeks later. During those 6 weeks, I learned more about Karen's unraveling. She had lost everything. The house went to Douglas in the divorce. Her car, a leased BMW, had been repossessed when she couldn't make payments. Her friends, mostly other women she knew from various social circles, had all abandoned her. She was living in a cheap extended-stay hotel near downtown, working part-time at a call center to pay for her criminal defense attorney. The sentencing hearing was packed. All the victims showed up, wanting to see justice served. The prosecutor recommended 4 years in state prison, arguing that Karen's actions were premeditated, showed a pattern of behavior, and had caused significant harm to multiple victims. Karen's attorney argued for probation, claiming Karen had already lost everything, that her life had been destroyed, that prison would serve no purpose. Karen herself read a prepared statement, crying and apologizing, saying she didn't know what had come over her, that she had gotten too focused on the HOA and lost perspective. Judge Patricia Hernandez listened to everything, reviewed the presentence report, and then delivered her ruling. She sentenced Karen to 3 years in state prison, with credit for time served, followed by 5 years of probation. She also ordered Karen to pay full restitution to all victims, including the HOA for the embezzled funds. "Miss Whitmore," Judge Hernandez said, "you violated the trust of your neighbors, your community, and your husband. You used a position of limited authority to prey on people who were simply trying to live their lives. Your actions were calculated, repeated, and showed a complete disregard for the property rights of others. This sentence reflects the seriousness of your crimes and the need to deter others who might think they can abuse small positions of power for personal gain. Karen was remanded into custody immediately. I watched as she was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, her face blotchy from crying, all her authority and arrogance finally stripped away. Outside the courthouse, there was almost a celebratory atmosphere among the victims. People were shaking hands, hugging, relieved that this chapter was finally over. Detective Morrison approached me with a satisfied smile. "Justice served," she said. "It really was," I agreed. "Thank you for taking this seriously." Theft is theft, whether it's a stranger breaking into your house or your HOA president abusing her authority. I'm glad we could get this one right. Life in Desert Vista Estates slowly returned to normal. Margaret Wu became the new HOA president, and her first act was to conduct a complete review of all rules and bylaws, eliminating the ambiguous or made-up provisions Karen had tried to enforce. The HOA went back to what it was supposed to be, a body that maintained common areas, enforced reasonable community standards, and stayed out of people's business as much as possible. I got a check for $400 from the restitution fund, covering the cost of my nail gun. Robert Chen got his $1,500. Every victim was eventually made whole, though it took time since Karen had to make payments from her prison job, which paid about 20 cents an hour. Douglas moved out of Desert Vista about a year after everything went down. He told me before he left that he needed a fresh start somewhere without the memories. I understood completely. He seemed lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. He had been trapped in a marriage with a woman who was slowly revealing herself to be someone neither of them recognized. As for me, I became a lot more cautious about HOAs. Olivia and I talked about maybe moving to a neighborhood without one, but we loved our house. We had great neighbors now, and the HOA was actually functioning properly under Margaret's leadership. But I never forgot how quickly someone with a little bit of authority can turn into a tyrant if nobody's paying attention. I also learned something about theft that I hadn't really understood before. It's not just about the dollar value of what's taken. It's about the violation, the sense that someone reached into your life and took something that wasn't theirs to take. When Karen walked out of my garage with my nail gun, she wasn't just stealing a tool. She was stealing my sense of security in my own home, my belief that my neighbors were basically good people, my trust in the systems that were supposed to protect us. The pneumatic nail gun sits in my garage now, in a locked cabinet. I use it regularly for projects around the house. Every time I pick it up, I remember that day. Remember watching Karen walk down my driveway like she owned the place. Remember the feeling of helplessness and rage. But I also remember what happened after. The community coming together, the justice system working the way it's supposed to, and a criminal being held accountable for her actions. Karen served 2 years and 3 months before being released on parole. I heard she moved to Tucson afterward, trying to start over in a city where nobody knew her story. Part of me hopes she learned something from all this, that she changed and became a better person. But honestly, I don't think about her much anymore. What I do think about is the importance of standing up to bullies, even when they wear the mask of authority. I think about the courage it took for Robert Chen to finally file that police report, for Margaret Wu to challenge Karen's financial records, for Douglas to walk away from his marriage despite the social pressure to stand by his spouse. I think about Detective Morrison taking our complaints seriously instead of dismissing them as petty HOA drama. The whole experience taught me that justice isn't automatic. It requires people to stand up, to speak out, to refuse to be victimized quietly. If I had just let Karen keep my nail gun, if I hadn't called the police that day, she would still be out there stealing from people, abusing her authority, making people's lives miserable. Instead, she's a convicted felon who lost everything. Her marriage, her home, her freedom, her reputation, all of it. And while I don't take joy in anyone's suffering, I do take satisfaction in knowing that we stopped her. We protected our community. We held someone accountable who thought she was untouchable. The irony isn't lost on me that Karen's obsession with control and authority is what destroyed her life. If she had just been a normal HOA president, focused on legitimate community issues, none of this would have happened. She'd still be married, still living in her nice house, still respected by her neighbors. But she couldn't help herself. She had to push, had to take more, had to exert power over people in increasingly inappropriate ways. It's a cautionary tale, really, about what happens when small-minded people get small amounts of power and let it corrupt them completely. About how even seemingly trivial positions of authority can be abused if nobody's watching. About the importance of community solidarity in standing up to petty tyrants. Sometimes I run into other people from the neighborhood, people who weren't directly victimized by Karen but who lived through that whole era of her presidency. We laugh about it now, in that dark humor way people do when talking about shared trauma. Someone will make a joke about getting a violation notice for breathing wrong, or about Karen trying to confiscate their dog for being the wrong breed. But underneath, the humor is a real awareness that it could have been so much worse, that if we hadn't stopped her when we did, who knows how far she would have gone. Margaret Wu did an amazing job cleaning up the mess Karen left behind. She restored transparency to the HOA finances, published detailed budgets and spending reports, created clear processes for violations and appeals, and generally treated homeowners like adults rather than subjects to be ruled over. The contrast was stark and appreciated by everyone. I also gained a new appreciation for my wife during all this. Olivia's legal skills and her instinct to document everything were crucial in building the case against Karen. Her willingness to talk to neighbors, to organize people, to push back against injustice, even when it would have been easier to just pay the bogus fines and move on. She's tougher than me in a lot of ways, more willing to fight when fighting is needed. "You were right about everything," I told her one evening about a year after Karen's sentencing. We were sitting on our back patio, enjoying an unusually cool summer evening, drinking beer and watching the sun set over the desert mountains. "I'm always right," Olivia said with a grin. "You should know that by now. I'm being serious. If you hadn't pushed me to document everything, to organize the neighbors, to really pursue this, Karen would have gotten away with it." Olivia's expression softened. "No, Yates. You started this by calling the police that first day. You could have just let her intimidate you, could have paid her stupid fee and gotten your tool back. But you stood up to her. That's what really mattered." Maybe she was right. Maybe it was both of us, and all the neighbors who found their courage, and the police who took us seriously, and the prosecutors who built a solid case. Maybe justice is always a team effort, requiring lots of people to do their small parts until it adds up to something meaningful. The tool theft that started everything, that pneumatic nail gun being carried down my driveway by a woman in a lavender polo shirt, seems almost absurd now in how small it was. $400. A single tool. But it was the catalyst for exposing thousands of dollars in theft, for stopping a criminal enterprise hiding behind HOA bureaucracy, for protecting who knows how many future victims. I've told this story a few times, usually when people complain about their own HOAs or when the subject of bad neighbors comes up. People are always shocked by how brazen Karen was, how she just walked into garages and took things, how she invented rules out of thin air and expected people to comply. But I try to emphasize the ending too. She got caught, she got arrested, she went to prison, she lost everything. Crime doesn't pay, even when the criminal is wearing the mask of community leadership. There's a new family living in Douglas's old house now, the house that used to be Karen's too. They're a young couple with twin toddlers, and they're constantly asking questions about the HOA rules because they're terrified of doing something wrong. I always tell them the same thing. Just be reasonable, maintain your property, don't be a jerk to your neighbors, and you'll be fine. The days of tyrannical HOA enforcement are over in Desert Vista Estates. But I also tell them the story, edited slightly for appropriateness, since the kids are usually around, about the HOA president who went too far and paid the price. I figure it's important for new residents to know the history, to understand that the current reasonable state of affairs wasn't always the case, and that it takes vigilance to keep bad actors from taking over again. Margaret Wu has been re-elected as HOA president twice now, running unopposed both times because everyone appreciates the job she's doing. She jokes that her campaign slogan is "Not Karen," which honestly might be enough, but she's more than just "Not Karen." She's competent, fair, transparent, and treats the HOA presidency as a service position rather than a power trip. Funny how much difference that makes. The Desert Vista Estates community has healed from the Karen years. Property values are up, which ironically is probably what Karen would have cared most about. But more importantly, people feel secure in their homes again. They don't worry about coming home to bogus violation notices. They don't stress about leaving their garage doors open on nice days. They don't live in fear of their HOA president. And me, I finish projects with my pneumatic nail gun, secure in the knowledge that my tools will be right where I left them. It's a small thing, really. It shouldn't be remarkable to expect your possessions to stay in your garage. But after everything that happened, I don't take it for granted anymore. Sometimes I wonder what Karen thinks about now, whether she has regrets about how things turned out, whether she wishes she could go back and just be a normal HOA president instead of a petty criminal. But then, I remember how she looked that day walking down my driveway with my nail gun, that smug expression on her face, the absolute certainty that she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. People like that don't usually change, not really. They might learn to hide it better, to be more careful about getting caught, but the fundamental entitlement and disrespect for others stays the same. Karen didn't steal from us because she needed the money. She did it because she could, because she enjoyed exerting power over people, because she got off on the control. The justice system did its job in her case. She was arrested, prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced appropriately. She lost her marriage, her home, her freedom, and her reputation. It's hard to imagine a more complete fall from grace. And while I don't wish suffering on anyone, I can't pretend to feel bad about Karen facing the consequences of her own actions. The restitution payments still trickle in occasionally tiny amounts from Karen's prison wages, and now from whatever minimum wage job she found after release. The full amount will probably never be paid, not really. But that's okay. The money was never the point. The point was standing up to someone who thought they were above the law, who thought a title and a badge made them special, who thought they could victimize people without pushback. We proved her wrong, definitively, publicly, and permanently. And that's worth more than any dollar amount. Looking back on everything now, several years later, the whole situation feels almost surreal. Did I really have an HOA president arrested for stealing my nail gun? Did that really lead to exposing a multi-year criminal enterprise? Did she really lose everything, including her marriage and freedom? Yes, yes, and yes. All of it really happened, right here in Desert Vista Estates in suburban Phoenix, Arizona, in a planned community that looks just like 1,000 other planned communities across America, which is maybe the scariest part. How many other Karen Whitmores are out there, abusing their small positions of authority in HOAs and neighborhood associations across the country? How many people are paying bogus fines or losing property to made-up rules because they don't want to rock the boat? How many petty tyrants are getting away with it because their victims don't realize they have recourse? I hope our story inspires other people to stand up, to push back, to refuse to be bullied by anyone, regardless of their title or position. Authority without accountability is just tyranny with a nicer name. And nobody, not even your HOA president, has the right to steal from you or abuse you or make your life miserable just because they can. That's the real lesson from my pneumatic nail gun being stolen by Karen Whitmore. Not that HOAs are inherently bad, or that all community leaders are corrupt, or that you can't trust your neighbors. The lesson is simpler than that. Stand up for yourself. Document everything, and don't let anyone tell you that abuse is acceptable just because it comes with an official-looking letterhead. Karen stole my pneumatic nail gun on a hot Tuesday in September, thinking it would be just another successful exercise of her authority over a powerless homeowner. Instead, it was the beginning of the end of her entire life as she knew it. She got arrested for the 12th theft. She got convicted on multiple felonies, she went to prison, and she lost everything in her divorce. All because she couldn't resist the urge to take things that didn't belong to her, to exert control where she had no right, to be a tyrant in a neighborhood that just wanted to live in peace. Justice was served. The community was protected. The bad guy lost. And my nail gun sits in my garage, ready for the next project, a symbol of how one person standing up can make all the difference. That's the end of the story, and honestly, it's the best ending it could have had.